Radhi. Gopi Jana Balabha Girivara Dhadi. Gopi Jana Balabha Girivara Dhadi. Jasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Jasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tiravana Chadi. Jamuna Tiravanam Chadi. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hadi. Madhava Kunjabi Hadi. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hadi. Madhava Kunjabi Hadi. Gopi Jana Balabha Girivara Dhari. Gopi Jana Balabha Girivara Dhari. Jasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Jasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Jamuna Tiravana Chadi. Jamuna Tiravana Chadi. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hadi. Madhava Kunjabi Hadi. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hadi. Madhava Kunjabi Hadi. Jayom Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivijagacharya Astatara Satasri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Gora Premanandi. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Well, minus our violinist, we'll begin this morning where we left off. Canto 10, Chapter 9, Text 11. I'll read the translation and we'll continue with commentary. When caught by Mother Yashoda, Krishna became more and more afraid and admitted to being an offender. As she looked upon him, she saw he was crying. His tears mixed with the black ointment around his eyes, and as he rubbed his eyes with his hands, he smeared the ointment all over his face. Mother Yashoda, catching her beautiful son by the hand, mildly began to chastise him. And here's Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary. Not only did Yashoda catch Krishna, who cannot be obtained by the yogis, she also scolded him. He who is constantly praised by even Brahma and Shiva. With a stick, she instilled fear in him, who instills fear in time and death personified. With that intent, this verse is spoken. He was rubbing ka santam. He was rubbing his eyes, Akshini, smeared with black ointment, Anjama Sini, with the back of his left hand. Mother Yashoda was holding his right hand. She frightened him, Bishayanti, by holding a stick. She began scolding him, Avagurat. Oh, you have such a restless nature, friend of the monkeys, pot breaker. Where are you going to get butter today? Today I will bind you up so that you cannot go and steal and eat butter with your friends. Are you afraid of being beaten with this stick? Scolding him, she lifted the stick as if to beat him, though she would never do such a thing. So there's an answer to the trauma people. Jiva Goswami writes, he cried excessively, fearing a beating because of having done wrong. Krita Gasam. Because of tears, the mascara was running from his eyes. Though he desired it, she did not wipe his tears with her hand because of his offense. With his hand, he rubbed his own eyes to produce more tears or to wipe the tears away. His eyes were slightly agitated with fear. In fear he cried. He looked up at her while she looked at him. Motherly affection, right? She scolded him in order to make him frightened so that he would become gentle and avoid such acts. Oh, agitated boy, crybaby, greedy boy, monkey lover, thief. From now on, I will not give you butter. I will tie you up in the house so that you cannot go anywhere and play. You will not be able to see any of your friends. With these words, she raised the stick as if to beat him. She did not beat him. He looked up at her with fear in his eyes, expressing pain. Then she scolded him. Taking his hand, which shook in fear, she scolded him for a short time. Whew. That's celebrated, right? In Priti Sandarbha, we're going to hear two different versions of this verse, 11 and then 12. So here's one. After he broke the yogurt pot, she scolded him, quote, she grabbed the hand of Krishna, who was crying intensely because of his crime, rubbing his eyes, which were running with mascara, with his hands, and looking up at his mother with fearful glances. She made him fearful by scolding him. Understanding her son's fear, she dropped the stick, and filled with affection for the boy, but not knowing his powers, she strongly desired to tie him up with rope. And then, same two verses, with slightly different commentary, slightly different translation. An example of what happened to child Krishna after he broke the yogurt pot is seen in these words of Srimad Bhagavatam. This is from Priti Sandarbha, by the way. So here's the different translation of the same two verses. Text 11 and 12. And next we're going to read 12. When caught by Mother Yashoda, Krishna became more and more afraid and admitted to being an offender. As she looked upon him, she saw that he was crying, his tears mixing with the black ointment around his eyes. And as he rubbed his eyes with his hands, he smeared the ointment all over his face. Mother Yashoda, catching her beautiful son by the hand, mildly began to chastise him. The paraphrasing of her chastisements didn't sound so mild. It was like, whoa. Mother Yashoda was always overwhelmed by intense love for Krishna, not knowing who Krishna was or how powerful he was. Because of maternal affection for Krishna, she never even cared to know who he was. Therefore, when she saw that her son had become excessively afraid, she threw the stick away and desired to bind him so that he would not commit any further naughty activities. So text 12. This is Prabhupada's translation. Mother Yashoda was always overwhelmed by intense love for Krishna. Not knowing who Krishna was or how powerful he was, because of maternal affection for Krishna, she never even cared to know who he was. Same as above. Therefore, when she saw that her son had become excessively afraid, she threw the stick away and desired to bind him so that he would not commit any further naughty activities. And I'm just going to read Prabhupada's purport and we'll end this morning. Mother Yashoda wanted to bind Krishna not in order to chastise him, but because she thought that the child was so restless that he might leave the house in fear. That would be another disturbance. Therefore, because of full affection, to stop Krishna from leaving the house, she wanted to bind him with rope. Mother Yashoda wanted to impress upon Krishna that since he was afraid merely to see her stick, he should not perform such disturbing activities as breaking the container of yogurt and butter and distributing its contents to the monkeys. Mother Yashoda did not care to understand who Krishna was and how his power spread everywhere. This is an example of pure love for Krishna. So confusion might arise, sometimes confusion arises, that says, like this last sentence, these are the characteristics of pure devotion. So why do we hear all this information in the Bhagavatam and elsewhere about the opulence of the personality of God, his supremacy being the source of everything, and so forth and so on, when the residents of Vrindavan, Mother Jasoda, in this case being highlighted, she doesn't care to know. And the answer, we'll say it backwards, she doesn't care to know because of the influence of Krishna's Yogamaya potency. her love is influenced by the Lord's Yogamaya potency. Of course, recognizing her position is her love is so intense, there's no need for her to know. So even when he does show, Yogamaya covers. She's not like, I want to know who this boy is. The cowherd boys are like that too. And from time to time we hear statements from the young gopi girls. They seem to know things about Krishna that indicate they have some idea of his divinity, but not really. In other words, it was common knowledge. Somehow it became common knowledge in Braja what Gargamuni said at the name-giving ceremony of Krishna. Specifically, that in three things. Specifically, in previous lives, he was this color, that color, the other color. And now he's blackish. But, they accepted reincarnation. So that's not a big deal. But they knew. And they knew, one of the things that Gargamuni said is that previously he was born as Vasudeva, a son of Vasudeva. Now, he didn't say, X number of days ago he was born as a son of Vasudeva. He just said previously, so that could also be in some previous lifetime. It wasn't specified. But they knew also, the third thing, that he would have powers like Narayan. And with those powers like Narayan, he would protect the Brijbasis. So they knew that he was powerful. And like Vasudeva, commonly Vasudeva accepted, he's just given some powers. Like somebody else is given powers to do something else, he's given powers like Narayan, specifically for protection of the residents of Braja. So he's powerful. Like, for example, when he was being swallowed by the serpent at night, big python, he remembered the words of Gargamuni. This is Nanda. He remembered the words of Gargamuni, that Krishna had powers and he would protect the Brijvasis, so he called Krishna. Not thinking he's the personality of Godhead, just remembering what and having faith in the words of Gargamuni. So Krishna was understood to have powers. But, not that he's God, he just was invested with powers. Some persons are, for example, some persons may be really good at music, or some persons may be really good at sports, or some persons may be really good at something, cooking. There's some persons may be good at different things. And the source of those abilities comes from Narayan, the personality of Godhead. So this is Nanda's perspective. And Nanda and Jasoda, their worshipable deity at home was Lord Narayan. So they felt protected by Lord Narayan. So they did various activities to gain the favor, the appreciation of Lord Narayan. And they felt protected by him. They felt Krishna was being protected by him. So that one can only imagine that would, for the sake of protecting Krishna, that ramped up their bhakti towards Lord Narayan. They were Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. That they weren't interested in knowing his divinity, that he's Narayan. They weren't interested in knowing. The only hint, well, there's two hints. One is after the Govardhan Lila. There's a whole chapter, Wonderful Krishna, where they're speculating, who is this boy? And so forth. So then, they entertain the thought, maybe he's, who knows, maybe he's not just an empowered person, maybe he's Narayan himself. And Nanda gave his understanding, that which was taught or expressed in chapter 8, the name-giving ceremony for Krishna is in chapter 8. Just after the Govardhan Lila, he repeats almost verbatim the words of the words of Gargarishi, almost verbatim. But his understanding is, he says, who is he? He's my son, and you have feelings for him like your son, and he has some powers. That's all. And then, other acharyas say laughingly, he can't be God. When there's lightning in the sky, he runs out of fear. Sometimes, he steals, and he does things that God wouldn't do. So he's not God. He's a living entity. He's my son. He's your son. See him that way. He's got some powers that Gargmuni said he would have, and so that's nice. And we should protect him, and that's our mode. That's how we should see him. The point I'm speaking about is the statement that Yasoda didn't care to understand. So what about us? Should we not care to understand? And the answer, short answer, absolutely we should care to understand. And when the stage of realization of understanding Krishna becomes mature, then our relationship with Krishna also becomes mature, and Krishna may do with us like Krishna does with the residents of Vrindavan. That is, withdraw by his Yogamaya potency, withdraw that curiosity and switch it over to just the sweetness aspect of being in service to Krishna without worrying so much about who is he. That's one of the features of the sweetness aspect of Krishna in his Braja Lila. So that's our path. We worship, like with deity worship. We don't worship neglecting rules and regulations. We follow the rules and regulations. We regard the deity and with an awe and veneration mood, the Aishvarya mood. That's what we do. And the name and the association of devotees and the holy dham and so forth. To come to the stage of realization of our spiritual identity. And when that becomes fully matured, then the spontaneous stage starts to evolve further and further. At such a stage, the curiosity or the intensity of inquisitiveness, who is Krishna really, fades a bit, and the spontaneous attraction for Krishna in his sweetness feature takes precedent, which is more pleasing to Krishna and is more pleasing to the soul than simply the happiness of understanding his majesty. It's not to belittle the sense of those who have Aishvarya Bhav. It's to honor the exceptional devotion of Mother Yasoda, Nanda Maharaj, the cowherd boys, the gopis, and all of his associates in the spiritual world. And when he performs his Leela in this world also. They don't really have an interest to know his divinity. They sometimes talk, but it doesn't last long. And the sweetness supersedes, takes over, and they roll on with the loving exchange that's very pleasing to Krishna. and very pleasing to their hearts as well. So one last thing, we mentioned it yesterday, but here it is again. Mother Yasoda supersedes, you name it. I mean, even included in this list is Brahma and Shiva. Say it again. Mother Yasoda, in her excellence of bhakti, supersedes Brahma and Shiva. That's quite a statement. That's quite a statement. How many people worship Lord Shiva? How many people worship Mother Yashoda? But she's more exalted even than Lord Shiva. And what is that power? When people want from Lord Shiva something, and what can Mother Yasoda bestow? A kind of love that Lord Shiva and Brahma and the most knowledgeable, elevated, pure devotees of the Lord will never know. She's immersed like that, and by honoring her, as we're doing during this Damodar month, hearing this pastime, we're honoring her. It's helping to make us eligible for that same kind of love, just by the honoring of her and hearing this message. It's a little repetitious. That's okay. It's when heard with right orientation of heart, there's meaning that we didn't understand before. That the deeper spiritual feelings awaken, and then the understanding of how she's doing what she's doing, how Krishna is doing with her, what he's doing with her, it becomes all the more relishable. So it's not just the storyline. The storyline is wonderful, but the deeper part is the appreciation of the loving exchange, the exaltedness of her love, and how Krishna is reciprocating in very remarkable ways, perplexing ways, seemingly contradictory ways. And it's not just play acting. He's experiencing emotions and he's exhibiting behaviors that are genuine. It's not an actor on stage. It's quite amazing. Not, as we heard several times, we'll hear it again and again, not easy to understand. We can get like a notional understanding, but a deeper understanding it's hard to get there. It takes pure devotion to get there. And the Bhagavatam wants to take us to that stage of pure devotion. So let's see how we're going to survive here without Radha.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, thank you so much for the wonderful nectar. So when it comes to us, we are most of the time struggling with the basics, which is just to get the basic sadhana going. It is just quite challenging with so many details that we are involved in. I'm just thinking how we might be able to develop some attraction so that the devotional activities don't appear to be chores, but rather we look forward to it.
Well, your question is the beginning, is the entry point. It's the yearning. And to amplify the intensity of yearning, then staying with the yearning. In other words, there's yearning and then we're distracted. So staying with the yearning, because I am recognizing, even the yearning itself is very fleeting, and so I'm a conditioned soul. I really, so it's the commitment to be in our relationship with Krishna. That's very fundamental. Which materially speaking, that's very covered. We're yearning for something else. We're hankering for something else besides knowing who we are. So I find, listening to Prabhupada speak on this point is really powerful. It resets the intention again and again. So coming to the human platform from the animal platform, how often did Prabhupada speak about that? You hear it again and again, and yeah. So, but then the forgetfulness, because we've been so long in the animal conception or material conception of life, we just become animals again, or not less than human. So it's primarily through hearing from the right source. The yearning or the hankering for spiritual reality, making that spiritual reality connection, as opposed to the illusion position. But the illusion, so the difficulty is the illusion position has a tight hold on us, or we have strong affinity for the illusory position. We're holding on to it. We don't let go. So you have to let go. And the yearning. Let go of this and acceptance of that.
If I have to extend that a little further, in the case of Mother Yashoda, Krishna was right in front of her, and everything was tangible and perceptive. But in our case, we are dependent on many of the subtle forces to align, or the non-perceptual aspects have to somehow become perceptual over a period of time with purification. And that's what becomes very challenging.
Well, we have to pay a price for our misuse of free will. That's all. I'm responsible. I'm paying my dues for my misuse of free will for so long.
Okay, another question I have is, we hear in the Brahma Samhita discussions that the childhood pastimes of Krishna are exhibited when Krishna appears in the Gokul Dham, but in the Golok Dham they are not exhibited. So when Mother Yashoda and Nandu Maharaj are there in the spiritual world, how are they experiencing their rasa?
I'll send him a text message and ask him. The answer is, there's this sensibility or bhava, although there's no lila that accompanies that bhava. And then again, this is one of the ways that our acharyas describe. In each day, but in the spiritual world, there's no sense of time. Time is conspicuous by its absence. Nonetheless, these are eternal associates, and when the Bhoma Lila of Krishna is performed, it renews that sense of bhava. And you extend that in saying, but the pastimes of Krishna, they're eternally going on in his Boma Lila don't stop from one universe to the next universe. And it's the same Mother Jasoda, same Nanda. In each circumstance, they're just unlimitedly expanded for however many universes that the Leelas are going on, one after the next, after the next. So, and those personalities are not different than the ones in the spiritual world. So, our rational binary processor can't really comprehend that.
Mm-hmm.
It's inconceivable. Nonetheless, there's the sense in the spiritual realm, the bhava, the feeling of the childhood pastimes, although they're not performed. That's the explanation given by our acharyas. So that's interesting now to realize that.
Yeah. Yes.
Guru Maharaj, is there a description of the gopis who were helping Mother Yashoda, who were around her? They were with her, so what were their feelings and what was their role, their position, and just how were they feeling when they were?
There's the only mention of how they were feeling comes at the point where she's trying to bind him and it's not happening. And they laugh. They're amused. It's not meant to happen. Just accept it's not meant to happen. Don't you understand? So then they have that's the only mention that's made. Because of just speaking in principle, although it's not expressed, just speaking in principle, there's a range of emotion amongst them. Some this, some way over on that side, somewhere in between, some mixture. That is to say, don't do this instead of saying, yes, you should do this. He's just a little boy, give up your... So, but what their emotion is similar to the discussion the other day. They're just moved. They're like Mother Jasoda. They're moved by waves of prema, and some even when for some moments they're feeling this, and then some same person some moments feeling that, and they have their personalities, and so that maybe more like this, and some others more like that, but. It doesn't say specifically, were they present when she's chasing him and scolding him? It does say that they're present when she's binding him or attempting to bind him. At least some commentaries speak like that. So one can intuitively, assume they were observing the whole pastime. But we don't know. Variety of emotions for their pleasure. Okay.
There are some online questions.
Really?
This is from Romapada Swami. When did Krishna stop stealing butter? After Damodara Lila or after taking cows to grave in the forest?
That very question was asked yesterday, and my answer was Krishna's pastime of stealing butter was for the pleasure. It was a childhood pastime for the pleasure of the elder gopis. And we don't know when he stopped, is the other part, but if he just moved, he transitioned from giving pleasure to them this way to giving pleasure to them that way. But his immersion was giving pleasure. He was deriving pleasure by giving them pleasure, and so we don't know. We can assume that even after the Damodara Lila, he was still giving pleasure, most likely still stealing. But his beginning to herd because he had this fascination for cows. So when he was with the cows, there's the fascination for being with the cows and the calves. Most likely, intuitively, reduced his stealing pastimes, tendencies. He was absorbed in another way. Next.
Question is from Akshay Prabhu. Is it offensive to try to find pleasure in all engagements of devotional service, like chanting, deity worship, prasad, association, devotional art?
No. Why ask that question? It's natural for the soul. We're pleasure-seeking beings, being part and parcel of Krishna. So where do you repose that pleasure-seeking tendency? You repose it on Krishna. Now, as purification proceeds, that pleasure-seeking tendency transitions to Krishna's pleasure. Instead of, I'm at the center and I'll get pleasure doing things that are in relation to Krishna. The selfishness dissipates, but it's not offensive, natural.
Next question is from Yamuna Mataji. Thank you so much for showing that we are honoring Mother Yashoda during this Kartik by glorifying her pastimes with Krishna. Is there any special way we should pray to Mother Yashoda?
I think that depends on the individual devotee. There are some standard prayers from the Bhagavatam that that someone who feels inspired to offer prayers to Mother Yashoda. They're spoken by Shukadev, and the verses are 20 and 21 of this chapter 9. And towards the end, I don't know the numbers of chapter 8, where Shukadev and Maharaj Parikshit honor Mother Yashoda and Nanda. So those are some standard ones. Well, it can be your own, or your own. Okay.
Next question is from Rangamati's father. How can we get and realize Lord Krishna's mercy and blessings?
Well, you get mercy of Krishna through those who are carrying Krishna's mercy. That's how he delivers his mercy. There are conduits for his mercy, and those are his devotees. That's how you get Krishna's mercy. So make nice relationships in service to the devotees of Krishna. You'll get Krishna's mercy. And then to realize it, that requires purity. So you strive for purity. And then, your receptivity, your realization receptivity becomes more acute. Still, we're dependent. So Krishna shows his special mercy by giving us that realization. It's not just something that we do and then the bell rings. The realization bell. It's Krishna's mercy comes.
Next question is from Giridhar. Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you for enlightening us with very sweet pastime. While meditating on this pastime, while doing daily spiritual activities, how do I know I'm crossing the line of inspiration to imitation?
Well, imitation would mean trying to bind Krishna. And it's not really so realistic to try to bind Krishna. But if you're doing that, you can know it's imitation. And another is, say, sustainability of appreciation of Mother Yashoda. As much as that's sustainable, then it's not imitation. It's appreciation.
Next question is from Neeraj Prabhu. Hare Krishna Maharaj, can you please shed some light on etymology of Kartik?
On the which?
Kartik.
No, what's the word before?
Etymology
Etymology.
of Kartik, after which this month is named.
No, I don't have I don't know that one.
Next question is from Amara Madhavi. Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. How do we let go when mind is fixed on something that may or may not help progress in nothing? When do I know here is a need to let go?
Scripture, Guru Sadhu Shastras, how you can know, and where you get the strength from. From Lord Balaram, he gives strength. Take shelter of the holy name, and you'll get strength.
Next question again from Neeraj Prabhu. Hare Krishna Maharaj. I heard that Radharani helps Mother Yashoda to bind Krishna by lending her hair tie. Is this true?
No. There is another Leela that's Radha Damodar. This is Yashoda Damodar. And there is a Radha binding Krishna Leela, which I can't remember right now. But tomorrow morning, you ask that same question, and I'll, if I remember to do this, I'll find that pastime, and we'll say it at the very beginning. The Radha binding Damodar. But it's not the way that was just described.
Next question again from Akshay Prabhu. Sometimes I feel dull points in the day when I don't feel the connection. Maybe because I am so materially anchored. So I try to seek that energizing points by trying to find it in spirituality. There's no question.
Okay, good for you. Is that it? Okay, Prabhupada ki. Thanks.